Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was 31, fried to a crisp at a grain and feed outfit down in Amarillo, juggling freight schedules, margin calls, and more middlemen than cattle. I was on my third energy drink and a 12-tab spreadsheet when Foster, my division head, and, oh yeah, my wife's college ex, leaned on my doorframe and said, "Hey, need you to clean up those miscoded freight adjustments from the second quarter. They'll go under your login." I stared at him. My name wasn't on those logs. I hadn't touched those files. But I knew that tone. It was the same one he used at company barbecues when he'd say, "Still playing Cowboy Blake?" Before we start, share in the comments. How's your day going and where are you joining from? And let's continue. That night, I pulled into our duplex and saw Mallory's silver sedan jammed sideways across the drive again. Our neighbors' kids had the curb clogged with lifted pickups and beer cans. It felt like every inch of my life was boxed in or blocked off. I stepped through the door and heard Whitney's voice low and sharp from the kitchen nook. I stopped by the hall vent, one of those old metal grates that carries everything, and froze. She was talking to Mallory. "I ran the joint checking down to $38 and change," she said, like it was a joke. "If Blake gets tagged for those personal vendor transfers, Foster says it'll be his third strike with compliance. I'll file in Randall County the same week. Clean break." Mallory laughed. "You sure he won't fight it?" Whitney snorted. "He won't even see it coming. It's a community state. I'll walk with half and no charges." She said clean, like it was some polished little trophy. I felt something cold settle behind my eyes. The distance at home, the little digs about how I was pretending to be a rancher for a company that hadn't seen dirt in 5 years. The way she'd joke about, "I'll just divorce you and keep the dog in the dishes." I used to think it was her being snarky. But no, she'd been working this, planning it. I didn't kick the door open, didn't yell, didn't storm in and demand answers. I just backed out, walked to my truck, and sat there staring at the porch light like it was a timer about to run out. I pulled out my phone and texted Toby. Me. "Need your couch tonight. Bring toe strap in the morning." Toby's the only friend I got who doesn't run his mouth. Next morning, I acted normal. Smiled through coffee while Whitney scrolled her phone at the kitchen island, probably Foster's texts. I told her I had to head to Lubbock to sit in on feed supply audits. She nodded like I was a ghost. Soon as I cleared the block, I killed our joint cards. She'd never touched the bills anyway. Moved my savings from the side account she didn't know about. Then I went to the garage and pulled down the go bag I'd stashed behind the rafters after Foster's first mistake at work. 13 minutes. That's how long it took to walk away from my house, my job, and the woman who'd spent 2 years setting me up to fail. Toby showed up in his old F-250 and tossed me a prepaid flip phone. "Call if you wreck," he said. He drove my Tacoma straight to his uncle's muffler shop and parked it under a tarp. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, just hit the road north and west, where the high plains stretch so wide it makes you feel like a dot on a windshield. I figured if I was going to start over, it might as well be where cattle breath fogs up before people do. I didn't have a plan past the edge of the panhandle, just kept driving west till the road got empty and the sky looked too big to lie to. Somewhere past Hereford, I pulled into a squat diner off a gravel loop. Old grain silos leaned against the wind like tired men. Inside, the cook had a cigarette tucked behind her ear and cracked eggs into a skillet like she was mad at them. I sat at the counter, drank black coffee, and kept my head down. A couple at the corner booth, mid-50s, work-worn but sharp, talked quiet over their plates. I caught the man say, "We're 3 hands short for next month's push, and Hank ain't dragging feeders again, not with that back." I turned, polite but direct. Didn't mean to eavesdrop, but if you're short labor, I'll work for a bunk. Don't need pay, just boots on dirt and a reason to wake up early. The man sized me up, square shoulders, dry smile, eyes that didn't blink much. "Name's Dale Rivers," he said finally. He stuck out a calloused hand. "And this is Brenda." Brenda had that kind of look that can measure your soul in one glance and know if you've been keeping your receipts. She didn't smile, not right away, but she didn't look away either. Dale sipped his coffee. You run equipment? Ran loaders, augers, feed rigs. Fixed a few too. Got your own gloves? No, sir. Brenda reached into her tote and pulled out a folded paper bag. Then finish your eggs. You're coming with us. We rolled down a long caliche road past the last of the wheat stubble. Just when I figured it ended in dust and cows, an old wooden arch came into view. It had one brand plate hanging from a rusted bracket, just a single R, tilted like it had slipped sideways in the wind. Rivers, Dale said. Been that way since my granddad. Never fixed it. Figured it matched our luck. He showed me to a worker's cabin tucked behind the equipment barn. No frills. Cot, hot plate, coil heater, and a little window that looked out at a pump jack nodding like it knew something I didn't. The bunk's yours, Dale said. You'll eat with us. Don't be late. Feedlot takes 5,000 head on a heavy turn. We run calves light and move fast. Alfalfa on 3 pivots. Wind'll fight you, and the dust will win. I nodded. That's fair. He pointed toward the yards. You'll start with Hank. He's been here since God got tired. Hank met me at the chute line. He had arms like old fence posts and a chin that did most of his talking. He pointed to a shelf. Gloves, dust masks. Don't be dumb in a pen. That was our introduction. Brenda came by around noon with a thermos of coffee and the paper bag. Inside, leather gloves, 2 red bandanas, and a folded note that said, "Supper at 6." That was it. Nothing fancy. Just a woman's way of saying, "You're not invisible." I spent the rest of the day sweating through borrowed coveralls, raking bunk lines, hosing dried muck off chute gates, and learning which pens ran hot and which just stank. My whole body ached by sundown, but it was the kind of sore that felt like progress. No keyboard, no fake smiles, no Foster breathing down my neck pretending to lead while planning to bury. That night, I lay on the cot with the wind beating sand against the window like fingers trying to get in. I stared at the ceiling and thought about that crooked R on the arch, how it had hung there for decades, tilted but still standing. Made me think about names that last, made me wonder if mine ever meant anything at all. The next few days ran together. Dawn came with cold air and long shadows. We fed, mucked, repaired, and hauled. I learned which hoses leaked and which gates liked to jam. I watched Dale take feed calls with a dry-witted patience, and I watched Brenda balance books in pencil with a calculator that looked older than the internet. Hank never explained anything twice. He didn't need to. When I asked dumb questions, he just looked at me like, "You already know." And I started figuring things out. I didn't talk much, and nobody pushed. Not even Brenda, who seemed to see more than she let on. 3 days in, I was stacking mineral blocks by the south pen when Dale walked up behind me. "You're not green," he said flatly. I shook my head. "No, sir." "Not running from law, are you?" "No, sir. Just a mistake I almost didn't catch in time." He nodded. "Everyone runs at least once. Smart ones stop when they find something worth staying for." I didn't answer. The next morning, I was at the pens before first light. Hank handed me a new pair of fence pliers without a word. Brenda poured coffee like I'd always been there. Dale handed me the feed chart and said, "You drive the next round." And just like that, I wasn't just crashing on a cot anymore. We didn't talk about what came before. Nobody asked why I looked over my shoulder when a truck slowed near the gate. Nobody asked why I flinched when I heard a phone buzz. They just let me work. That's all I needed. One night, after scraping a busted auger clean and hosing it down, I stood by the gate and looked up at that crooked R again. Wind whipped across the lot, bringing dust, diesel, and something that felt close to peace. I told myself right then, I'll stay till I earn back the man I used to be, even if I'm the only one who'll ever know I did it. On the second Monday after I started, I stepped into the office trailer to grab the mineral log, and she was already there. Starched white shirt, braid tucked under a ball cap, typing fast on a laptop with 2 screens open. One was a vaccination log, the other was a stress test sheet tied to ag loans. Before I could introduce myself, she looked up and said, "We're not hiring." I blinked. Good. I'm not on the payroll. She gave a half smirk and went right back to her spreadsheets. That was my first run-in with Paige Rivers. Dale had mentioned her once. Said she split time between the ranch and Panhandle first, did some large animal vet work, and ran numbers on AG credit files better than most bankers. I believed it the second I saw how fast she tabbed through her data. No fluff. No eye contact she didn't have to give. Brenda brought her a sandwich and set it down without saying a word. Paige nodded but didn't stop typing. I didn't chase her. Didn't try to talk just to talk. I had work to do. The mineral deliveries were still a mess. Short bags, late trucks, no manifests. I didn't pitch a fit. I just sorted it. Built a pencil-run receiving sheet and marked it in grease pencil on the inside of the door. Simple columns, no wiggle room. Hank could run it one-handed while sipping coffee. That week, we shaved shrink off 2 inbound lots by just under 1%. Not a miracle. We just staged water troughs and shade tarp on intake. Took 20 minutes to set up. Saved us hundreds. Hank didn't say a word, but he cleaned his hat brim before lunch, dusted it off with his forearm like something mattered. I took that as a win. Paige hovered around the numbers. Not in a nosy way. More like a compliance officer with a pulse. She'd walk through the lot, make small marks in a little pocket notebook, and then hit me with questions out of nowhere. "What's your end game, Blake?" I looked up from the tarp line. "Today? Get 18 loads of alfalfa cubes under cover before the outflow hits." She narrowed one eye and smirked like I passed a test I didn't know I was taking. Curtis Mitchell showed up later that week, strutting like he owned the air. He was the town vet, tall, overfed, and loud. Wore a monogrammed vest and called everyone under 50 kid. He didn't look at me as he walked in, just brushed past like I was a wheelbarrow somebody left out. He leaned on the counter beside Paige. "You shouldn't be messing with herd health. Let the grown-ups handle that side." Paige didn't flinch. She pulled the ledger out, flipped to his last invoice, tore a check from the back, and handed it over. "Here's your final payment. From now on, I'll need itemized billing, signed chute side by whoever's present. No initials, no shortcuts." Curtis blinked like he'd been slapped. "You questioning my records?" "No. I'm correcting our process. You'll adjust or lose the account." He muttered something and left. Paige kept writing, calm like nothing happened. After that, I knew exactly who she was. Sharp, unsentimental, and allergic to being underestimated, which meant I stayed out of her way and kept my head down. But something kept tugging at me. That weekend, I took a closer look at the UHF gate scanner Dale had mostly written off. It worked, but no one trusted it. Said the readouts lagged, dropped tags, missed pings. I wanted to know for myself. Sunday morning, I ran a quiet test with Dale. Walked 2 pens through, one head at a time. Scanned tags, checked the dumps against our original receiving logs. Most numbers lined up. But 4 tags pinged twice. Same electronic ID, 2 different animals. Dale frowned. "Reader glitch?" "Could be," I said. "Or someone's double tagging." He crossed his arms. "You thinking theft?" "I'm thinking lazy theft. Or smart fraud. Same result." I printed the anomalies and tape stuck them to the window by the office door. Didn't call a meeting. Didn't panic. I just kept the thread in plain view and pulled when I could. Paige passed the window twice without saying a word. Third time, she stopped and tapped one line. "This steer. ID ends in 1147. He's in pen 12? Supposed to be. You seen him elsewhere?" She flipped her notebook open and pointed to a feed note she'd written 3 days back. "I watched this one get hauled out with a dental abscess. Tag was on his right ear." I nodded. "Our logs say left." Her eyebrows lifted just enough to register alarm. "So somebody's duplicating tags?" "Looks that way." She turned toward me, really looking for the first time. "You got more of these?" 3 more. 2 still here. 1 showed up in a sale barn flyer over in Vega. "Same ID number?" "Different animal. Different hide pattern. but same last 5 digits, same bolus date, same lot. She walked out without a word. Next morning, she showed up early, flipped through the printouts again, then pointed to the bottom row. "You're still not on payroll, right?" "Nope." "Good. You keep digging. Quiet." Then she added, "Thanks for not jumping straight to accusations." I shrugged. I've been falsely accused before. I don't do that to others unless I know what I'm talking about. From then on, she treated me different. Not friendly, not soft, just like someone she could trust to read a column and catch the difference between sloppy and criminal. Over the next week, I started tying shipment times to gate entries. Noticed some odd delays, loads showing 2 hours off, weights inconsistent. It was all circumstantial, but it was a start. Hank watched me tape up a new chart and said, "You looking to be a detective now?" "Just trying to plug holes in the bottom of the boat before the whole thing sinks." He grunted, and that was as close as he ever got to approval. Later that day, I caught Dale staring at the window where the charts hung. He didn't say a thing, just nodded once. That night, I walked the pens, wine snapping at my jacket, boots heavy with manure and gravel. Somewhere out there, someone was skimming cattle like it was a side hustle. I didn't know if it was rustlers, someone in-house, or a neighbor playing smart. But I knew this much. They weren't counting on anybody looking twice at tag numbers and shrink. That was their mistake. And I don't miss twice. A week after we caught those duplicate tag pings, the wind shifted south and brought trouble with it. I was walking fence line with Hank when he stopped mid-stride and sniffed the air. Then I smelled it too. Burnt grass, faint but close. We crested the small rise above the south pens, and there it was. A thin strip of fire crawling through the weeds like a lit fuse. Wrong season, wrong wind, and exactly the right place to cause chaos. By the time we got down there, the heat was already pushing a few dozen steers up against the south fence. They bawled and shoved each other, dust kicking high. Hank didn't wait. He grabbed a shovel off the back of the four-wheeler and started throwing dirt like a machine. I followed suit, lungs burning from smoke and grit. My arms felt like wet rope, but the adrenaline kept me moving. Brenda came tearing down in the side-by-side, hair wrapped in a bandana, water can rattling in the seat beside her. She didn't ask what happened, just handed it to Hank and gave me a look I hadn't seen since I was a kid, and my mom was keeping her calm while the barn roof leaked. That kind of look steadies you, whether you deserve it or not. We got the strip beat out before it hit the dry wash. When the smoke cleared, it left a black scar 100 feet long right against the south fence. Dale showed up 5 minutes later, scanning the horizon like he expected whoever lit it to still be watching. "Wind don't start fires," he said. "Someone planned this." He was right. The burn wasn't random. It ran tight along the boundary that backed onto Todd Clay's spread, a bigger operation, cleaner books, and a reputation for nothing ever going wrong. Too clean, if you asked me. That evening, I suggested we hang trail cameras along the south line. Dale nodded and dug out a box from the barn marked hog cams. Said he hadn't used them since the feral pigs left for the river bottoms. We set 3 cameras on fence posts, one near the wash, one at the bend, and one hidden inside a busted salt block facing Todd's property. While we worked, Hank muttered, "You think he's bold enough to burn fence line?" I kept my eyes on the horizon. Bold or desperate, either one fits. Later that afternoon, Paige came in from town, dust on her boots, and that little notebook already in her hand. "Saw Curtis Mitchell at the co-op," she said. "He was awful chatty with one of Todd's hired men." I asked, "You think it's connected?" She didn't answer, just wrote it down in her notebook, closed it, and said, "Let's keep that thought quiet." The next morning, I started mapping shrink losses by pen versus days on feed. 2 pens near that south fence looked nibbled, like something small kept taking bites. We weren't losing 20 at a time, nothing loud. 2 or 3 steers gone every week. Always the big ones, never the runts. It was surgical. When I brought the numbers to Dale, he frowned and rubbed his chin. I've seen rustlers in the 80s. Bolt cutters, midnight trucks, chaos. This ain't that. Whoever's doing this knows cattle and paperwork. An accountant's patience, I said. He grunted. Yeah, and they know how to make it look like weather or weight variance. That night I sat under the weak cabin lamp, flipping through our bolus logs, each ID a metal capsule buried in a steer's stomach for traceability. We had a run of series ending in 1237. Then I spotted a 1214 tag on a steer we'd shipped last month. That batch wasn't even ours. Someone was moving tags between lots, cloning numbers the same way I'd seen crooks fake freight codes back in Amarillo. I started jotting down bolus series anomalies, matching them against feed schedules. The more I mapped, the clearer the pattern looked. Anything along the south fence showed small, consistent weight drops, followed by tags that migrated elsewhere. Somebody was double-dipping, selling cattle twice. Paige caught me working late one night and leaned against the doorframe. You always chase ghosts this hard? Only the ones that pay rent, I said. She stepped closer, folded her arms, and studied the bolus sheet. You don't even carry a rifle. What exactly are you planning to do if this turns into something real? I'm not here to shoot somebody's shadow, I said, not looking up. I'm here to build a file thorough enough for the district attorney to act on. She didn't laugh. That's not how people like Todd get caught. It's exactly how they do. Line items, one after another until the stack tells the story. She stared at me for a long second, like she wanted to say something but didn't. Then she pushed off the doorframe and said, "Try not to get burned out there, fire season or not." After she left, I sat still for a while, listening to the windmill creak by the stock tank. It groaned like something old remembering its job. I could feel something lining up, like the world was getting ready to test me again. I wasn't sure if it was rustlers, fate, or the same bad luck that followed me out of Amarillo. Maybe all three. Brenda left a note by the coffee pot the next morning. Her handwriting was neat, practical. Storm tomorrow. Tie what moves. I underlined it twice. Then I grabbed 2 extra halters and hung them by the back gate, the one we always forgot to latch in a hurry. By noon, the sky had that yellow tint that means something's coming. Hank and I tightened the tarp ropes, shut every panel, and checked the south fence cameras again. One was crooked, like someone had brushed against it. I adjusted it, made sure the lens pointed right where Todd's land dipped low near the cattle guard. As we drove back, Hank said, "You ever notice how quiet it gets right before a bad blow?" "Yeah," I said. "Same quiet you get before people make bad choices." That night, lightning flashed far off in the distance. The windmill clanked in rhythm with the thunder. I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd poked something that wasn't ready to be seen. Still, I poured myself coffee, looked at those taped-up tag charts, and said out loud, "Keep pulling, Blake. Keep pulling till it breaks." Then I grabbed my gloves, checked the latches one last time, and waited for the storm to test the fences. The first sign was the silence. Everything got still, like the wind was sucking in a breath too big to hold. Then noon went black, just dropped out like someone yanked the plug on the sky. Dust slammed into the yard with no warning. Grit hit my teeth before I could even curse. Metal clanged once, twice. I heard Hank holler my name through a bandana from somewhere up the back lane. I didn't answer. There wasn't time. We split without a word. He veered north toward the alley by Pen 10, and I bolted south, running blind with one arm shielding my face. It was like trying to move through a grain silo full of sand. You couldn't see, only feel. Boots on memory, hands on metal. I slammed one gate shut, then another, then found a gap by the sorting pen where the hinge panel had been left loose. I pulled the panel across, hooked a chain over the post, and yanked it tight just as a steer came sideways out of the dust and knocked into my hip. I flew 10 feet easy, hit the ground hard, and rolled. My ribs popped like knuckles, but I scrambled up and swung the last latch into place before the animal could double back. My eyes were full of dirt, lungs raw from breathing it. Then I saw headlights punch through the brownout, square beams cutting just enough of a path to see someone stomping through the swirl. It was Paige. She marched straight at me, face wrapped in a sleeve, and shoved a spare wraparound mask into my hands. "Next time, don't be a hero without gear," she snapped. Before I could thank her, she turned and ran toward the alley I hadn't locked yet, just disappeared into the wall of dust. I chased her light, moving gate to gate, locking everything I touched. We worked by feel, yelling once in a while just to keep tabs. She slammed panels shut with her shoulder, climbed halfway up one chute to redirect a panicked steer, then dropped back into the dust, like she'd been doing this her whole life. I found 3 yearlings trying to face the wind head-on near Pen 5. They wouldn't turn, just kept pushing into it like they were looking for something. I grabbed a pushboard, braced it across my knees, and started edging them toward the chute one step at a time. When they finally went through, I dropped to a knee, wiped the sand out of my eyes, and leaned on the fence, sucking air like it owed me something. The worst of it passed in about 20 minutes, but it felt like 2 hours. The wind didn't stop. It just lost its scream. We regrouped and walked the pens, checking each section for damage or open steel. Cattle were spooked, but still inside. Not a single head lost. We kept walking, boots dragging through dust ankle deep. The only sound was the slow breath of 500 steers coming down off panic. I leaned against a gatepost, arms dead, face caked in dirt. Paige stood across from me, hair streaked with grit, eyes rimmed red. She looked me over and said, "Good work." "Same," I said, too winded to say more. We didn't move for a while, just stood there, clothes flapping in the afterwind, letting the adrenaline bleed out. I don't know who stepped first, but we met in the middle. 1 step, then 2, and then her hand brushed mine. A pause, then a kiss, quick, dry, almost apologetic. Not about love, not yet. Just a, "Hey, I see you" kind of kiss. Real, no lightning bolts, just dust and closeness, and the heat that comes from doing something hard together. We both pulled back at the same time, eyes down, boots shifting in the dirt. No words. It wasn't the right moment to unpack anything. Dale's truck rolled up slow out of the dying wind. He parked near the feed barn, stepped out, scanned the pens like a man taking stock. Then he looked at us, one eyebrow raised. "One serious save," he said. That was it. Nothing about what he might have seen. He just climbed back in and drove toward the shop like nothing was different. Back at the house, Brenda had already lit the stove and set out plates. She didn't say a thing either, just slid 2 extra plates onto the table without looking at anyone. We ate in silence. Grit still coated my throat, and my ribs ached every time I leaned forward. Nobody needed to talk. We were just grateful the pens still held, and the cattle hadn't bolted halfway to Oklahoma. After dishes, Paige stood up, stretched, and said, "I've got reports to file back in town." She didn't look at me, didn't have to. I followed her outside. The wind was calm now, just a breeze. I reached for my gloves, then paused. "Thanks for showing up," I said. "Back there." She looked up, 1 foot on her truck step. "I knew you'd forget the second alley." I laughed once. "Fair enough." She climbed in, shut the door, and drove off without another word. But the way she looked at me before pulling away, it wasn't distance anymore. It was patience. I hosed the dust off my boots by the barn, slow and quiet. The water turned dark with mud and storm grit. My knuckles were scraped, 1 rib probably bruised, and I couldn't stop replaying that kiss in my head. I told myself to keep it together. I'd seen what happens when you rush a good thing. I'd done it before, jumped too fast, believed too quick. That wasn't going to happen again. Back in the cabin, I sat on the cot and peeled off my shirt. Dust poured out of the sleeves like I'd been buried in it. I didn't reach for my phone, didn't open my laptop. I just laid there, arms over my head, thinking about how she didn't flinch from work, didn't blink in a crisis, and never once acted like the job owed her comfort. That's the kind of person you build with. But I also knew you don't earn that kind of trust in one storm. You earn it pen by pen, gate by gate, week by week. I cracked the window to let the breeze in. Somewhere out near the south fence, a gate chain tapped steady in the wind, like it was keeping time for the next move. I spent 3 nights hunched over a folding table in the cabin, lit by a clip lamp and fueled by coffee strong enough to knock over a fence post. My hands smelled like dust and printer ink. I had spreadsheets and paper dumps spread wall to wall, UHF scans, weigh slips, intake logs, and vet billing sheets. Every tag ping, every load weight, every head count got a mark. I circled duplicate EPCs, same numbers, different times, sometimes overlapping locations. That shouldn't happen. Bolus logs were worse. I starred 6 mismatched capsule series, all tied to the same pen cluster down by the south boundary. Trailcam 2 finally gave us something. 2:17 in the morning. Grainy image, hooded jacket, someone easing a gate half down, pausing, then lifting it again. Could have been wind. But Cam 3 showed him up close. He moved with purpose. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a yellow tag, and clipped it into his steer's left ear. Then swapped it for an orange, this time on the right. 1 tag out, 1 tag in. Fast hands, like he'd done it before. Next day, I slid the prints onto the desk in the trailer. Paige was already there, eyes on a feed-to-weight ratio chart. She picked up the trail cam photos without a word. "Could be one of our own night pen riders," she said finally. "Could be," I answered. "But look at this." I handed her a flyer from the county fair 3 towns over. Todd's operation had sponsored a prize steer, and someone had snapped a photo of the animal in his sale yard. ID was clear as day on the tag, 12-2-0417. I pointed to our own UHF dump from last month. Same EPC number, different hide, different breed, same tag. Paige leaned back in her chair, lips tight. "This is more than bad record keeping. We've been selling steers we don't own, twice." Hank helped me run a scale test 2 mornings later. We pulled total head count across 14 suspect pens and compared it to gate logs. Came back short by 11 steers. Not 2 or 3. 11. "You don't feel it day to day," I told him. "But when you total a month, it screams." He looked at the list and shook his head. "This kind of quiet stealing takes brains. And guts." I nodded. "And somebody who knows the numbers well enough to move under them." That same afternoon, I pulled out the prepaid flip and called Toby. Told him to dig through our old work emails. I needed every message Foster ever sent using my login. Anything tagged as a vendor payment or system adjustment. Toby didn't ask why. Just said, "I'll text when I've got something." And he did. Less than 6 hours later. 2 forwarded emails with timestamps from last March, posted to our corporate finance system while my keycard showed me clocked in at a feed yard almost 40 miles away. "You were on camera," Toby added. "Clear as daylight. You didn't touch a keyboard. That's fraud, man. On their end, not yours." Paige flagged another layer while I was still reeling from the Foster news. She'd reviewed the last 8 months of vet invoices and noticed 2 charges for vaccinations logged on a Friday evening. Late enough the barn should have been empty. Only person around was a teenage feeder who later swore up and down that no vet ever came through. "Curtis padded the billing," Paige said, pointing to the dates. "Late Fridays. No signatures, not even initials." "Low dollar stuff," I said. "Just enough to slide under the radar." "Still matters," she replied. "Tells us where his ethics sit." We laid it all out in a binder Brenda helped us build. She stapled and tabbed it like she was making one of those church cookbooks, color-coded and deadly. Every sheet had its place. Tag clones, bolus series conflicts, trail cam still frames, weigh reconciliation logs, suspicious vendor billing. You could flip the binder one way and see Todd Clay's name 10 times over. Flip it the other, and Curtis Mitchell's fingerprints were all over the paperwork. Dale walked in while we were still sorting. He looked through the binder once and closed it slowly. "We call the sheriff now?" I shook my head. "Give me 2 more days. 1 more walk of Todd's fence line. 1 last UHF read near his gate. I want it airtight." He stared at me, quiet, then gave a small nod. Next morning, Paige and I loaded up. Hank rode in the back with a tool bag and a bolt cutter just in case. Paige drove. She didn't talk much. Neither did I. About 4 miles from the southern slope, I told her to slow down. There was a stretch of fencing that didn't look wrong, but didn't look right either. The T-posts had a shine to them. Not much, but enough. I stepped out and pressed one with my boot. It wobbled ever so slightly. "Someone reset these," I said. "Clean work. Look here." Hank crouched at the corner post and pointed with a gloved finger. 2 staples pulled out just enough to drop the top wire and reset it again. Smooth. Almost professional. "You know what this is?" I asked. Paige didn't answer. It's confidence. Whoever's doing this thinks nobody's looking close enough to catch it. She pulled her cap lower. "They didn't count on you being here." We got our last UHF read from the scanner that pointed toward Todd's south loading yard. 4 tags lit up that shouldn't have. I printed the dump right there and stuck it in the back flap of the binder. That night, back in the cabin, I opened the binder, flipped past Brenda's tabs, and wrote my name on the inside cover. Just 5 letters. Renner. If this thing turned into a war, I wanted it to be damn clear who brought the bullets. And they weren't made of brass. They were made of paper, timestamps, and cattle ID numbers. I sat there for a long time, staring at the name. My name. After months of hiding, ducking, running from the mess Foster and Whitney dumped on me, I wasn't hiding anymore. This time I had the receipts. And I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting a place that gave me a real shot to be useful again. I walked into the county office with dust still on my boots and that binder under my arm, heavy and organized. And Paige was already inside, sitting stiff in a molded chair under a picture of a judge who looked like he hadn't smiled since Nixon resigned. She stood when I walked in. "I'm recused from bank business," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. "But this is Blake Renner. He manages supply for our yard. He'll walk you through it." I nodded and opened the binder on the table in front of the brand inspector, the assistant DA, and a secretary who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Didn't matter. I wasn't here for her. I let the tabs do the talking. Started with tag clones, moved into bolus series conflicts, then way logs, vendor billing, and trail cam evidence. Each section tight. No filler. Brenda had made sure of that. The brand inspector was old school. Wireframe glasses, sunburned neck, spoke with a slow drawl that made you think he was behind. He wasn't. He held the trail cam photos up to the window like he was appraising diamonds. The assistant DA flipped pages like a man looking for a loose string. He only asked 3 things. "You got dates for every log? Who had custody of the binder and when? You got independent confirmation on the sale yard tag match?" I answered all 3 before he finished his sentence. Paige slid over the timestamp sheets and witness logs. Dale had signed his pen tallies by hand. The DA tapped the table once. "All right, let us work." 4 days later, they pulled a quiet warrant and sent 2 deputies to Todd Clay's yard. No sirens, no headlines, just 3 plain trucks and 1 brand officer with a clipboard. They found 4 steers with boluses matching series we'd logged 2 months prior. 2 had UHF tags that responded to EPCs registered to cattle we'd already sold at auction. That wasn't bookkeeping error. That was theft. Curtis tried to play it cool when they called him in. Said he just prepared invoices and didn't manage the vet treatments himself. Problem was, we had a shoot side log with his initials, time-stamped the same day we'd proven he wasn't even on site. Bad hill to die on. The DA's tone went cold. Word started leaking within hours. Co-op gossip moves faster than storm warnings. Todd's lawyer made noise at first, called it all misreadings and tag errors. Then someone handed him the way reconciliation. He shut up mid-sentence. Back at the yard, Dale sat down hard on a sack of feed in the supply barn. He held the binder like it was full of gold and rubbed his eyes until his hands dropped into his lap. "You probably saved us 6 figures across a season," he said. "We just never saw it. They stole slow, smart, quiet." I didn't say anything. Just looked out toward the pens, where the cattle were breathing steady for the first time in weeks. That night I called Toby on the flip and sent him the final piece. The timestamp proof that Foster used my login credentials to post payments while my badge was logged into a completely different system, feeding cattle in full view of a time-stamped camera 38 miles away. Toby didn't even sound surprised. "That's what I needed," he said. "Compliance is going to eat this alive." He forwarded everything straight to corporate audit and CC'd their legal team. Foster's clean record went muddy real fast. 2 mornings later, Whitney texted me from a number I didn't recognize. The message was syrupy. "Hey, can we talk? Just want some clarity on the old accounts. Doesn't need to be messy." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. I didn't answer. Let the lawyers have that party. I'd already packed up every piece of myself she'd ever touched and left it in the rear view. The DA moved fast, filed formal charges, theft by deception, livestock tampering, and falsifying business records. The brand office posted a public notice. Todd was listed by name. Curtis wasn't. Turns out he made a deal quicker than coffee cools. I didn't dance when I heard. Didn't pop a beer or make a speech. I just walked into the cabin, sat on the cot, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since the day Foster told me to take the blame for numbers I didn't touch. I don't mean I cried or collapsed. I just breathed. Slow, deep, full. Like a man who knew, finally, no one was standing behind him with a knife. Later that afternoon, I helped Hank unload a shipment of cube feed. He didn't say much, just handed me the dolly and walked beside me to the barn. Halfway through the second pallet, he looked at me and said, "That binder of yours? You ever think about printing another copy?" I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" He shrugged. "Folks around here respect proof. Might be nice for 'em to see what it looks like." I chuckled. "We'll see." Dale came by that night after supper with a whiskey bottle and 2 glasses. We sat by the old salt block outside the equipment barn. "I almost called the sheriff that first night," he said, staring out across the lot. "Glad I didn't." I swirled the glass. "Would have been too early. Not enough weight to hold it." He nodded. "I don't usually miss patterns. But this one, I was too close." "You trusted the routine," I said. "That's what they count on." "Still," he said, eyes sharp now, "you kept going when most folks would have quit. You didn't just save cattle. You saved payroll, water rights, supplier credit, maybe the whole yard." I didn't know what to say to that, so I raised my glass and clinked it against his. Next morning, I got up before dawn and walked the pens. The air was crisp, sky a deep blue that only comes after weather's cleared out. Everything smelled clean, like work was about to begin, not end. That was the thing no one tells you about coming back from a takedown like this. You don't get confetti. You just get another day. And if you're lucky, it's yours. After the smoke cleared, Paige and I didn't make a thing out of it. No long talks, no declarations. We just worked side by side and let the air between us settle. Most days we didn't even touch, but the space between us got smaller in ways that mattered. She told me about turning down a 6-figure analyst job in Dallas. Office with a skyline view, company car, the whole box. Said she walked out of the second interview when the managing partner made a joke about ranch kids being useful for reading crop yield charts but not much else. "They looked at my boots like I'd brought manure inside," she said, one evening as we checked feed mixes. I chuckled. That's how I knew I didn't belong in suits. I always wiped my boots, but people still acted like the dirt was contagious. I told her about Foster, about the way I let ambition and love get twisted up in each other, how I let myself get used because I didn't want to see what was plain as day. She didn't judge, just said, "People don't get sharp unless they've been cut first." Brenda was the one who kicked off the co-op idea. She leaned on the kitchen counter after supper one night and said, "Stop selling everything like it's just feed or filler. People like story with their salt." We called it Triple R Ranch Pantry. Real simple stuff at first, jerky strips cut by hand, tallow soap Brenda made in loaf pans, and white cheddar blocks aged in her old storm cellar under the house. We stamped tags with 3 stacked R's, Rivers, Renner, Range, black ink on cotton. No frills, just clean lines and a name that said where it came from. Paige handled the numbers. Brenda worked the farmer's market booth every other Saturday. First week, we sold maybe 9 bags of jerky and 4 wedges of cheese. By the third market, we sold out in under 2 hours. A man from Amarillo asked if we'd scale. Brenda looked him in the eye and said, "Not unless it fits on our kitchen table." That was the whole plan right there. No investors, no neon signs, just real food from people you could talk to. Paige kept it professional and public. She had to. Wearing 2 hats, bank rep and vet tech, meant every handshake came with a side of scrutiny. But most nights, after chores and after supper, we'd sit on the trailer steps, watching dusk fold over the yards. She'd pull her braid loose and jot small notes in her book. Sometimes I'd ask what she was writing. "Nothing urgent," she'd say. "Just things to remember if the wheels ever come off." I'd sip coffee and listen to the gate chains rattle like wind chimes off beat. We didn't need to talk about the storm. We'd already lived through one. Then Toby called. "Foster's done," he said, straight to the point. Compliance locked his admin access. Audit team opened a forensic review last night. That timestamp stuff was a sledgehammer. "You got a clean slate now, man. Clean and recorded." He paused, then added, "HR brought Whitney in for a sit-down. Asked about her access to your laptop and login credentials. She stopped responding after that. Guess the clarity she wanted just showed up in writing." I said nothing for a minute, then told him, "Appreciate it. Truly." "You earned it," he said. "Call me when the next shoe drops." Curtis tried to get ahead of the fallout by playing the whisper game. Started pushing the line that Paige was too green to run real numbers. Said the yard only survived because Dale kept the old school methods alive. But the other ranchers didn't buy it. They saw who showed up when a calf was stuck at 2 a.m. They saw Paige standing in muck up to her knees with a glove on one hand and a clipboard in the other. That's what counted. Not the talk. Meanwhile, I built a second packet for the DA's office. Nothing explosive, just more weight. Short weights logged from Todd's yard tied to cloned tags on cattle that didn't match the official intake logs. Not enough to break open headlines, but enough to tighten the case further. Casework loves nails more than fireworks. The county fair rolled around late September. Brenda packed 3 coolers full of jerky and a milk crate of soap wrapped in muslin squares. We were set up by 7:30, sold out by 9:15. Hank wandered off with 2 bags and didn't offer to share. We let him slide. Paige stood behind the table writing in that little notebook of hers. I leaned over and peeked. She had written 3 words underlined twice. "Keep this small." I liked that. No pitch decks, no brochures. Just keep it honest and real, like the arch out front. After church the next Sunday, Dale motioned me to follow him out to the road. We walked to the edge of the drive where the old wooden arch still stood, sun-bleached and cracked. The crooked R hung sideways like it was shrugging at history. He didn't say much, just tapped it with his knuckle. "Been thinking," he said. "Maybe it's time this old thing stood straighter, and maybe it needs company." I didn't answer right away, just ran my hand along the edge of the post and looked up at that 1-letter brand, swinging in the breeze. I didn't say yes, didn't say no, but for the first time in a long time, I felt my name steady inside my chest, like maybe it belonged on something solid, something earned. The week the filings cleared, you could feel the tension ripple out from Todd's yard like heat off asphalt. Quiet pressure, but steady. Grain orders went unfilled. 2 of his feeder contracts stalled. His books had been rigged for show, not for storms. And this storm was legal, slow, and permanent. When his note tipped and defaulted, Paige didn't say a word. She just filed a recusal from the credit file, signed the ethics form, and left the room while the committee handled the rest. No one argued. The numbers stood on their own. The auction wasn't public fanfare. No signs, no fast talking. Just a meeting in a back office with a few qualified bidders, some clipped nods, and paperwork thick enough to choke a mule. I registered Renner and Rivers Range LLC through a trustee. Dale didn't want his name up front, not out of fear, but out of principle. "I'll stand on it when it's ours," he said. Brenda prayed through it, the way real women of faith do. Quiet, consistent, eyes open. When the final bid landed, we held the south tract, the alley easements, and the smaller yard for a number that felt heavy in my chest, but fair on paper. No deal ever feels light when it's real. Dale stood next to me under the shade of the post oak by the sale office. I looked at him and said, 50-50. You run day to day. I'll take care of books, supply lines, and market forward. He didn't hesitate, spit in his palm, and stuck out his hand. I spit and shook. Nothing more was said. We filed the application with the state brand registry that same week, asked them to add a second R to the original Rivers plate. Brenda attached our joint ownership docs, the LLC certificate, and a sketch she'd drawn on scrap paper. 2 clean R's, side by side, no tilt, just steady iron. Hank saw the form on the kitchen table and smirked. "Triple R," he said. "Triply R's." Then he whistled off down the hall like it was already settled. That afternoon, Paige walked the new yard with me. She kept her hands deep in her jacket pockets, boots dragging a little like the weight of everything had finally caught up. We stopped by the old heifer barn, boards creaking in the breeze, and stood looking at nothing in particular. "I know how it looks," she said without turning. "Conflict of interest. Paper trail full of my last name." I looked at her, calm. "Not in your heart?" "No, not for a second." I let that settle. Then I reached into my vest, pulled out a small ring. No diamond, no show. Just a strong band. Simple, solid, straight. "I'm not a fancy man," I said. "I just know where I want to build. And it's here. With you." She didn't say anything at first. Just stepped forward, leaned in, and rested her forehead against my chest. Her shoulders shook once, then again, laughed and cried all in the same breath. "Yes," she said. "Yes. You really are nothing like those glass tower boys." Brenda cried in the kitchen when we told her. Dale rubbed his eye and claimed it was from sawdust, which was a lie, but we let it stand. Hank whistled something that didn't sound like a song but was probably meant to be one. We ate stew that night at the table with the checklists and loan forms shoved aside to make room for Brenda's biscuits. Paige sat next to me, her boot brushing mine under the table like punctuation. After dinner, we signed the partnership papers with ink still drying from the printer. Brenda notarized it. Dale initialed every page with a slow, steady hand. When I laid down that night, I felt the kind of sleep slide over me that I hadn't touched since I was a kid. No alarms, no threats, no waiting for the next hit. Just quiet, earned rest. The kind of rest that only comes when you believe tomorrow's yours to earn. We put up the new arch the first week of fall, just after the last cut of alfalfa, and before the cold settled in for good. 2 clean R's cut from steel plate, welded side by side, straight and level. Not leaning, not crooked. Below it, a plaque Brenda insisted on. Black letters on brushed metal. Renner and Rivers, built on work and weather. Dale held the ladder while I drilled in the last bolt. Paige stood back with Hank, arms crossed, watching the wind move through the grass. No ceremony, just quiet satisfaction. The brand office mailed our approval letter in a flat envelope, cleanly stamped. Hank tacked it up inside the office trailer like it was a trophy buck. Right above the calendar and next to Brenda's feed notes. Said it was the first thing worth framing in there since the price of hay dropped below $200. We pressed fresh orange ear tags with RR Triple R into a box the size of a seed sack. Paige and I walked them out to Pen 6 at first light, tagger in hand. Swapped out the last of the old singles one by one, no rush, just steady work. The cattle twitched, but didn't buck. They knew the hands on them were good. It felt like something more than routine, but we didn't speak it out loud. No crowd, no cameras, just our boots in the dirt and the sound of a new beginning snapping into place every time the tag clicked through. We mounted a small sign at the South Yard gate. Renner and Rivers Range, LLC. Folks still call it Triple R, and that's fine by me. Around here, names evolve into shorthand. Some say it means Rivers, Renner, Range. Others say Ranch, Respect, and Repairs paid on time. I like all of it. Truth's in the use. The DA closed the case without a fuss. Todd pled out. He had no angle left once the way logs landed. Curtis accepted a smaller charge in a smaller courtroom. Face low, voice small. Foster lost his chair, and whatever shine he'd clung to cracked in half. Whitney's lawyer sent one more letter, full of polished nonsense about marital entitlements and equitable claims. My lawyer sent back a 3-page breakdown of bank statements and a 1-line response. No, that was that. The co-op pantry found its rhythm. Small batches, local orders, folks who shook our hands and called us by name. Brenda ran inventory with a spiral notebook and a short pencil. Paige took calls while sitting on the porch swing, boots tucked under her, vet bag still by the door. She made lists quietly and never once talked about wanting to be anywhere else. I could tell. One evening, the sky burned low over the cow barn, the kind of orange that feels older than time. We sat on the porch, boots propped on the rail, silence stretching easy between us. The air smelled like cedar shavings and hot dust, and the gate chains ticked in rhythm with the breeze. I reached behind the bench and pulled out a small ledger I'd recovered in new cloth. Old book, new skin. I handed it to Paige. Inside the front page, written in block letters, were 8 words. Triple R. We take care of each other. She read it, smiled, and didn't say anything right away. Just reached over, squeezed my hand once, and looked back out at the yard like it was hers too. And it was. These days I'm past 55, still up before the sun, still tightening bolts myself when the chute squeals. I'm telling you this in plain terms because that's the only way I know how. I don't shoot problems down or chase justice with heat. I file it. I weigh it. I carry it into rooms where people with power have to see it. And if you're ever passing through and wondering how it turned out, drive just past the bend and look for the arch. Walk under it on a windy day. Listen to the way the metal hums when the breeze cuts through both R's, and how the cattle breathe steady behind it. That sound? That's a man getting his life back the right way. What would you have done if you were Blake? Walk away or fight to clear your name? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story hit home, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.